going to go straight into our next panel, the state of student debt in California, to get more into the weeds about exactly what all of our guest speakers were touching on, and especially on the work that Assemblymember Stone has carried. During this segment, we will be taking audience questions at the end here. So please feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A box that's towards the bottom of your screen. A friendly reminder, please keep your comments and questions respectful and relevant to the topic at hand. All right, so I'm happy to start introducing our panelists with us today. We have Marlene Garcia, the Executive Director of the California Student Aid Commission, also known as CSAC. Marlene, do we have you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, thank you. We also have Suzanne Martindale, Senior Deputy Commissioner of Consumer Financial Protection at the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. Suzanne, are you on?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
All right. And last but not least, we have Mahmoud Zaria, Western Regional Director at Young Invincibles. Mahmoud, do we have you on?
Yes, I'm totally excited to be here. Hi, Sam.
Thank you, Mahmoud. All right, so let's get started with our kind of first topic discussion at hand from anyone. Feel free to get us started here. As we've been hearing, California has made a bunch of great strides over the past couple of years, and we're at the forefront of protections for student loan borrowers across the nation. So from your specific position, how do you see the current status of student debt policy playing out in California today? Maybe we can go to Mahmoud on the advocacy front.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. With the help of our grassroots advocacy from the viewers, from the Campaign for Borrower Rights, we've made some amazing strides in the last few years. I think starting with AB 2251, this was first introduced as a increased standards that were set to be enacted by the federal government in 2016. But as many of us know, 2016 was we did not have a very favorable administration that was favorable for student borrowers. And so, with the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos at the time, canceling plans to increase servicing standards and consumer protections for student borrowers, we felt like it was in our interest for California to make sure that they could support student borrowers. And so, as the federal government no longer fulfilled their obligation to help us, and many student borrowers, AB 2252 created some protections, and we were really able to get some momentum and monumental changes through strong protections with AB 376, the Student Borrower Bill of Rights. And so AB 376 was a 2-year bill, and it included the creation of the new student loan ombudsperson in California to help individuals who run into trouble, as well as creating the most basic consumer protections for student borrowers. And then this year, with great strides and advocacy efforts, the ability to pass AB 424 to provide extra protections for private student loan borrowers.
Marlene, can you tell us and all of us watching a little bit more about the commission itself? Make sure our viewers know who you all are and what you're working on, and what we can see in the next couple of years, maybe to prevent student loan debt in the first place, or where California is leading the conversation there.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Sam, and I'm really pleased to be here for the Free My Future Summit. We at the Student Aid, so I'm the Executive Director of the California Student Aid Commission. We serve about 500,000 students each year by providing various forms of financial aid. Our signature program is the Cal Grant program. And our goal, when you look at borrowers, you have your prospective borrowers, your student borrowers, and then your borrowers in repayment. We focus, and we're trying to focus more on the prospective borrowers and student borrowers to really work hand in glove with allies such as yourselves and all the other organizations that have been supportive of this summit, as well as the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, so that we can do a better job in coordinating that information on the front end. So students and families understand what they're getting into when they go to college, and that they're in fact informed about the various options for paying for college, and that the last resort would be a loan, that you want to exhaust all the financial aid grants on the front end. And this is obviously particularly important for first generation students in California who don't have the academic or financial infrastructure at home to analyze all these options. So we really think that it's a critical state responsibility to make it as easy as possible for students to access information so that they can make those good decisions, and to also be supportive of them as they have questions along the way. And I'm happy to talk about our student loan debt service review work group that we convened this past year. As a result, Governor Newsom proposed the establishment of the Student Loan and Debt Service Review Work Group, which was adopted through the State Budget Act in 2020. So the California Student Aid Commission convened a group, and thank you, Sam, for being a representative on our work group for about 10 months, looking at the issues and specifically looking at California's role, trying to understand who holds the debt, who struggles to repay the debt, and who's most likely to default. And so this was really an exercise in trying to gather more data and information about California borrowers and who's struggling and what we can do to coordinate and provide support services at the state level, as well as coordinate with what the feds are doing, not to replicate what they're doing, but to fill those gaps, especially for undocumented students who don't have access to a lot of the federal programs. So we had a series of 31 recommendations come out of this report, and I'm happy to talk about them further if you have questions, but that's just an overview of what we do. And I should say that our primary responsibility is financial aid, and we triannually produce a student expense and resource survey of students across California, across all the segments, to really learn more about how they're paying for college. And the students are struggling. In our last Sears survey, in any given month, 1 out of 3 students is experiencing food insecurity and or housing insecurity. And so these are all resources that they aren't getting proper support. And unfortunately, many of them turn to credit card debt, which is the absolute worst. So we did a deeper dive into the credit card debt, and 70% of students, when they couldn't meet their payments, they turned to credit card debt and use that as a backstop to address their lack of affordability. So we're deeply concerned and eager partners to work with all of you.
Thanks, Marlene. Yeah, that's a lot of good information, and folks, so anyone listening with either siblings going to college, or if you're going to college, check out the Student Aid Commission for current financial aid options here in California. And also, Mahmoud, I know Young Invincibles works with, a lot of young people and college students right now. Can you add on to maybe what you've been hearing, what college students have been going through during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, there's no surprise that, all the challenges that young people face has exacerbated during the pandemic. And so, we've had a student parent roadmap, and seeing the complexities that student parents are facing, along with, other non-traditional students, looking at former foster youth, looking at first generation students, returning students. And we provided pulse surveys as well after the pandemic to sort of see how bad have these challenges increased in the pandemic, and notably so they have increased. One thing I am optimistic about is living in California, having these roundtables, having these work groups, having the ability for our young people to share their stories. And so I think the student debt working group has been super monumental for student borrowers to express and share their stories that are uniquely different from each other's story, yet they're all dealing with the same burden, and that's living in California's cost crisis, being a student borrower, and understanding that student debt is a huge issue for students, But when you couple that with living in California's cost crisis, food prices increasing, rent increasing, non-tuition related costs as a whole increasing, it's definitely just a horrible circumstance for California's future. And so working in California to ensure that there are not just consumer protections, but ways to alleviate and work towards debt forgiveness. I'm incredibly optimistic, and I think the ability in California for us to share our stories about what student borrowers are dealing with, especially when we look at women of color that have been dealing with the biggest brunt of loans. I think being able to allow young people front and center to share their experiences, not as anecdotal evidence, but as a real living proof of what it means to be a student borrower in California, I think has really helped elevate our work in the advocacy space, but also, having stakeholders that are willing to listen, right, and hear these stories and understand that the day-to-day challenges that young Californians are facing during school and after education is far different than those in previous years.
Certainly, yes. We're all adjusting, trying to get to a new norm, or back to as close as we can to some of the good stuff before the pandemic here. And I know, Marlene, you all have been working around the clock trying to support students during these times. And as Mahmoud said, though, we're all kind of optimistic for what can come next here in California, since we have been leading the way. So maybe circling back on the report from the work group, can you just kind of give us the big takeaways, or maybe what's next from that? I know we will certainly continue working with you all to see what we can do as a next step there as well.
Yes, thank you. So, after we released the report, and we spent a lot of time talking to individuals from all different perspectives, and really were able to collect some really great insights. But the biggest takeaway for me, and I'm not shocked, unfortunately, is that when you take a closer look at student loan debt in California, maybe the bulk of the debt is held by graduate students, but when you look at the undergraduate debt, the significant disparate impacts of the student loan debt based on demographics is really startling. And so, for example, Black students may not have the highest loan debt, but they have some of the highest repayment challenges. And so, for example, a Black borrower with a degree, an undergraduate degree, they are nearly 50% more, they're nearly 50% carry more than 50% more student loan debt than their white peers after graduation. And they're also 57% more likely to default. So that's really concerning. And then also other demographic groups, women also borrow more than men. Women hold nearly 2/3 of the national student debt that accounts for about 50% of the total higher education enrollment in the United States. And then probably the most concerning is the debt accumulation among students attending private for-profit institutions, which is very high. So for example, in 2016, 83% of graduates from four-year for-profit institutions had student loan debt with an average of $39,000 in debt, or a 41% or average per borrower than graduates from other types of institutions. And so when you look at, and when you lift the hood and look at who's carrying the most debt and who's having the most trouble paying off that debt, you start to see a very troubling picture. And for us, the borrower repayment issue is probably the area that requires most urgent attention, because those are the ones who are struggling and really jeopardizing their future financial picture because of their challenges in addressing the student loan debt.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting those, really important points to take a look at when we're taking a look at student debt in California, and just the numbers. It is, I think, something that is worth very specific policy solutions to be helping these groups of student borrowers navigate the repayment process, because it shouldn't just be left all up to them. We know that we are operating in a broken system, but we are hopeful for upcoming announcements and reforms from the folks at FSA, with Richard Cordray at the helm there, that we heard earlier, to put in some more reforms so that, the burden isn't just on student borrowers trying to figure this all out as well. And then speaking of that, Suzanne, I see you back on with us. We definitely want to highlight, what resources we have here in California for folks. And we know that DFPI, the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, is a place that California borrowers can go to. So I'll turn it over to you to just, tell us a little bit more about the department. What should student borrowers be taking away from here? What can they expect if they go to the department right now?
Sure, thanks, Sam, and thanks for everyone bearing with me this morning. My work laptop just totally hates me this morning, so I had to switch to my personal desktop, but I'm here. So again, my name is Suzanne Martindale. I am the Senior Deputy Commissioner overseeing our new Consumer Financial Protection Division here at the department. The department has long been in place as kind of the state banking regulator, but thanks to significant legislation passed last year, not just the Student Borrower Bill of Rights, but also a broad financial reform law that was in Governor Newsom's budget, our new department now has broad and flexible consumer protection authorities over financial products and services generally. But the great news about that is that it really builds upon the work that Assemblymember Stone and so many others have done to give us tools to conduct oversight over a whole range of companies that are marketing products to students, that are servicing loans and the like. So now we have, pursuant to that bill that Assemblymember Stone passed in 2016, we have a licensing program. So the big federal servicers like Navient and Fed Loan Servicing, they have to get licenses from the state of California from us. What does that mean? That means we're getting data from them, we conduct examinations, and if we find violations, we can send our lawyers their way, and if need be, take enforcement actions to stop violations of the law. And we have done that. Also, it's important to know that we work very closely with our partners, the Attorney General's office, with the Department of Education, with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And a lot of that work, you may not see it out in public, but behind the scenes, we are tightly coordinated with our federal partners and with other states at this moment to ensure that all the things that are in flux with federal student loans, the servicing transfers, preparing for the restart to repayment, that we're in close coordination. So we are actually monitoring in real time as borrower accounts are being transferred between servicers to make sure that the paperwork doesn't get lost, to make sure that customer queries are responded to with fair and accurate information, and that we're preventing violations of the law so that you don't have to, as a borrower, come to us or go to the CFPB or to Department of Ed to have to file a complaint, although you can and you should if you do have a problem. So there's a lot of work that we're trying to do, particularly as the largest state by population with 4 million borrowers here in the state of California, to make sure that to the greatest extent possible, we are preventing hiccups, problems, confusion that borrowers are going to experience as a result of all the changes that are coming in student loan land right now. Now, of course, the challenge we face as regulators is the student loan system is inherently confusing. It just is, right? There's so much that we need to clean up. That's why a lot of these initiatives the work that we're doing closely with federal student aid to help push out information so people are aware of, the PSLF waiver, are aware of the servicing transfers coming, the return to repayment. We want to do our part as well to make sure that borrowers are getting the information we need. We're trying to increase our social media presence. We also have updated resources on our website. I will put a link when I'm done speaking in the chat so you know where those borrower resources are. We want to be to play a role in disseminating good information, making sure that we are getting out to borrowers so you all know that we are also a resource. Even if you're not sure if a company's broken the law, but you feel like, you're getting the runaround, something isn't right, I feel like I'm having a problem, you can always file a complaint with us. When you file a complaint with us, we will forward it to the company in question, and they have to respond to us. We will review the complaints. If something looks like we need to escalate it, send it to our licensing team to have them investigate. We may do that. At the end of the day, we don't know what we don't know. So, we really appreciate when borrowers take the time to file a complaint with us, because even if at the end of the day, we don't know necessarily whether, we're going to be the ones in the best position to resolve the problem. It's going to depend on the nature of the complaint. We will forward it to the company, and, that helps inform us. It helps us understand the trends out there, what the common problems are, and that can inform our work and investigations, and even recommendations we may make to the administration about how maybe we need new legislation. So, we really want to be involved. We want to be a resource. And so just know that, again, we are licensing and examining these companies. We respond to borrower complaints and review them. And we are working with our other partners to make sure that collectively government's doing everything it can to try to clean up the years and years and years of problems that the student loan system really constitutes today.
Thanks for sharing all that, Suzanne. Yeah, so definitely, folks, we're going to drop in more links in the chat here, but DFPI for you in California, issue, not sure what's going on with your loan. I mean, just send them the information, so at the very least, our departments know what's going on in real time out there with the student loan servicing industry. And I know we've been hearing stories, especially right now as everything is about to change for 2022. It may take hours to get a hold of your student loan servicer, and none of us have that time to stay on hold. So, thank you, Suzanne, for being out there and connecting the dots here for getting some more information and helping borrowers out during this time. I did want to just ask, I think maybe this is the first time this has come up in the summit right now. Could you just be a little bit more clear about when you mention the changes in servicers happening right now? Want to make sure folks understand that some servicers are exiting the industry and what that means for them. Oops.
Sam, was that directed at me?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, this is something that, again, we are monitoring very closely. This is largely being led by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but we are conducting real-time examinations to make sure that, as some of you may know, it's been in the news that there are some of the large federal servicers who have been in contract with the Department of Education to handle people's student loans. Some of them are not renewing their contracts and are no longer going to be handling those accounts. Some of you may have started to get notices about that. If you haven't yet, you may soon monitoring your email inbox over the next few months. And so what's happening right now is every week there are batches of loan accounts transferred from one servicer to another. The servicers are supposed to be exiting. Granite State is one of them. Fed Loan Servicing was going to exit. Now they got their contract extended for another year, but they are eventually going to leave. And of course, that's the servicer that has been handling all of the people seeking to certify their service toward public service loan forgiveness. Also, Navient. Navient is leaving the system and transferring their accounts, or actually they're kind of assigning their contract over to a company called Maximus, which I think is doing business as something else. I forget. It's like aid something, I forget the name, but there are some borrowers who are going to have their accounts transferred. AidVantage, thank you, Amanda. I knew somebody would know. So this is concerning. Why is it concerning? Because two different servicers may have very different computer systems, right? Some of them have different infrastructure. We want to make sure that any account information, your payment history, any queries you've made about your account, applications to switch to a different repayment plan or certify your income or certify toward PSLF. We want to make sure all that information gets transferred faithfully to the new servicer, because if that paperwork gets lost, it may be very difficult, if not impossible, to recover it. And we don't want anyone to not get credit for payments they've made, which could result in losing credit toward forgiveness, being assessed a late fee that you shouldn't be assessed, right? We don't want that to happen. So behind the scenes, our examination teams, and again, it's our folks in California working with other states and with our federal partners, are monitoring the transfers in real time when these batches are being moved from one servicer to another. And so far, it's really, we're focusing on the other servicers. The public service folks are probably going to be transferred later. That is part of the reason why Fed Loan Servicing's contract has been extended to give us more time, because there is more paperwork associated with PSLF, all the other things you have to file, your certifying your employment and so forth. So that's going to be happening. I believe we have an estimated, I think just shy of 1 million folks here in California are estimated to be ultimately transferred in the coming months. So again, keep eyes peeled for information from your current servicer and or from the Department of Education. Make sure that that's where you're looking. Another thing that I will mention right now that is of concern to us is, while there's all this confusion around students, you may see ads, you may receive text messages, you'll see Google ads, receive phone calls from companies, third-party companies that are saying they're going to help you with their loans. These are like student debt relief companies. Sometimes they say that they provide document preparation services. These companies often charge a fee for their services and really don't help you, or they overstate what they can do for you. Be very wary. Although it is frustrating dealing with your loan servicer, you should be dealing with them directly and or responding to information you get from the US Department of Education, because these third-party companies can make deceptive promises. In some cases, they charge high fees. Some of them may be outright scams. In fact, our department has taken several enforcement actions over the past year against these kind of student loan debt relief companies for deceptive promises, for unfair fees, actually for unlicensed activities. Some of them really are doing servicing and should be licensed. We've recouped more than $1 million in refunds and penalties coming after these companies for illegal activity. So another thing to be wary of as we're in this moment of servicing transfers, preparing for the restart to repayment. You should be very wary of third-party companies claiming they can help you with your loans.
Thanks for that, Suzanne. Yeah, definitely want to make it clear that on top of repayments starting again next year, on top of what you've been hearing about the changes for PSLF, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, we have student loan servicers exiting the industry. And so if you have one of those servicers, maybe Suzanne, you can put it in the chat too. Granite, Navient, Fed Loan will be around for, sounds like, for another year. Make sure that you know who has your student loans as all these changes are happening. So do you want to step back and kind of focus again on this work group report, just because, again, the work group, we looked at the college affordability spectrum, right? And definitely that's why we have all these folks here looking towards 2022. I know this past year, there's been changes kind of all over the spectrum here. So maybe starting with Marlene, just seeing, in 2022 with some recent changes, what's going to be happening on the prospective college student side. Then we'll go to Mahmoud to let us know kind of what's on the horizon for advocates looking in 2022. And Suzanne, I know you all are getting ready to fully ramp up the student loan ombudsman there in DFPI, and also preparing for all these changes in California. So again, taking a look at the full college affordability spectrum here. Marlene, what is California planning to do next year, kind of preparing students on financial aid and some of those reforms that CSAC is right in the middle of?
Well, there's a lot we're expecting to happen in 2022, both at the federal level as well as at the state level. There have been some major federal changes, and really the mantra that I think everyone is realizing, these systems are so complicated. It's the same thing with, loan debt, same thing with financial aid. It's so unnecessarily complicated. So everyone is trying to streamline at the federal level. They have actually taken action to dramatically streamline the financial aid application process. So the free application for federal aid known as the FAFSA, has been streamlined from 110 questions to 36 or 38 questions, depending on your size of family. So that's a huge change that simplifies the process for students. It doesn't make it so daunting. And we're at the state level going to be adapting our California Dream Act application to, in fact, mirror a much more streamlined application. There's also been changes to the financial aid Pell Grant. There's more eligibility for students to have access to more basic needs aid, which is precisely where students need help. We need to educate students and families. When they look at college, they look at the tuition cost. And sometimes it's high, depending on where you go, and sometimes it's low. But what they don't often consider is the living expense portion. And in California, that can oftentimes be higher for a student than the actual tuition, especially if you're going to a community college. So we really are going to engage in a lot of outreach. And the big change that the state has engaged in is every single student in the state of California, every single high school senior is going to be urged to complete a FAFSA or a California's Dream Act application. And the schools, the new statutory requirement is that the schools starting next fall will be required to certify that all their students have completed the FAFSA or the CADA unless they have formally opted.
I just wanted to share a little bit of the power of storytelling with what it means to be a student borrower, and because I didn't really cover about the 2-year bill of AB 376. Like with 4 million student borrowers in California, accruing about, I don't know, $150 billion in student debt. I think we thought it would have been a little bit easier to advocate for more consumer protections for student borrowers. I mean, I think the first year of the AB 376, our call to action wasn't heard. And so we had another crack at it last year to advocate for it. And I think the storytelling portion was really important for us. Young people not just expressing what it means to be in debt, what it means to be in repayment, and what it means to have what their experiences contacting these loan service companies is like, but also expressing how easy it is to apply for a student loan in comparison to the protections that are given for applying for a credit card, right? And so sharing these stories about the ease and access to applying for student loan, and then not being given the proper messaging and education and follow through with these service companies, I think was really important to earn the hearts and minds of policymakers.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Mahmoud. We definitely want to remind folks that none of these changes are possible at the federal or at the state level without hearing directly from student borrowers themselves. So thank you for emphasizing the need. Policymakers, stakeholders, they all need to hear directly from borrowers what's happening. Too frequently, we get to easily hear from industry within the halls of, at least in Sacramento Capitol building and other, I'm sure, legislative offices, right? They have the means to meet with folks there. And, they would always report that there's quality service happening. Nothing is wrong. But when we hear from borrowers who are actually going through repayment, who are trying to figure out how to get out a loan, we know that that's not the case. So thanks for emphasizing that. And let's see. So sorry again for the interruption. We're going to go straight to audience Q&A. We want to make sure we get to hear from you. So please go ahead. For those of us who are here, are able to join back in, at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A box. Please feel free to start putting your questions there. If you put a question in the chat box, please move that over to the Q&A so we can get to that. But first, I know a lot of folks may be thinking this, and we do want to just clarify, state authority, federal authority, what's definitely possible policy-wise. I think a lot of folks are wondering, we get this question a lot, what can the state do around debt cancellation? So feel free, anyone here, to jump in and answer that question. Just what's possible regarding debt cancellation here in the state of California?
I would just speak from a policy perspective. So that's where I primarily focus. And we have looked at those issues. We looked at them in the context of the work group. I think really the issue is how you coordinate these efforts with the federal, because there's a lot going on right now, lots of discussions. I think some of those discussions didn't manifest in the way some of us thought they would at the federal level. And I think that it's one of those issues that, you know, it's a costly item. It's a, you know, it's a budget item, and it's something that I think state policymakers will look at. Whether there will be targeted debt cancellation, I'm not sure. But certainly there's a difference between those who are living in poverty and trying to repay their debt. They're the ones who most frequently find themselves in delinquency or default. And so we were able to collect a lot of data that provided a closer look at who's struggling the most and whether there's a way to do some targeting, at least as a state effort. But all of those are issues that really have significant budget implications, and they would have to be negotiated through the budget process.
Yeah, I just want to add, I mean, aside from, you know, student loan forgiveness programs, there isn't much, but I think the time is now for us and student borrowers to continually advocate digitally or in person or on the ground, but tweet out the federal administration that, you know, the president can literally cancel student debt today by the swipe of a pen, and just continually message that and create, you know, a huge push from millions of Californians, you know, in support of that action.
All right, and then we have question here, and probably Mahmoud, maybe you can answer this one for us. You know, are state policy leaders working with those in other states to share information and lessons learned? We heard from Assemblymember Mark Stone saying that California is a template for many other states. So what do we know on the advocacy front here?
No, yeah, definitely. I think, you know, California, I always say with fashion as well, we create a trend and then we see fashion show up 10 years later in the East Coast. But this is the same with policy and advocacy. I think, you know, California being the 5th largest economy in the world, you know, holding down 4 million student borrowers, I think we can play as, you know, the test for advancing consumer protections, advancing some student debt cancellation, and what it will look like at the federal level, but also at the state level. And I believe there are other states that are working towards their own student borrow bill of rights.
And also you should know that, you know, we coordinate with other state regulators that have licensing programs, that have ombudspersons. We're about to get a student loan ombudsperson as well, starting next month. And so there are regular meetings, multi-state meetings, not just in the context of what I was talking about previously with monitoring the servicing transfers, but just generally speaking, we're always meeting and making sure, you know, we make sure that other states are educated on all the changes that have happened in California law in case they want to try to seek similar authorities themselves. Also, you all should know, if it hasn't come up already, that at the Department of Education, they are engaging in what's called negotiated rulemaking. With all this to say, looking to update a bunch of different regulations related to repayment, PSLF, loan discharge opportunities. We have a seat at the table on behalf of state regulators. State AGs are also at the table as well. So we are also providing our own perspective from the states to the federal government, so that when federal regulations and these programs are updated, we are pushing for the broadest and most flexible access to all of the benefits that borrowers should be receiving under the federal program. You know, if you're disabled, if your school closed, right? If you're a public servant, you should be getting your loans canceled after you've met certain conditions, and some of those programs have not met their promise. So just know that we are advocating as well before the federal government to see wherever we possibly have authority under the Higher Education Act to try to make it easier for you to repay and then ultimately get your loans either paid off or canceled.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, definitely. Student loan ombudsman in California and other states is another great way that our states are stepping up and to coordinate to support borrowers. And then let's see, I think maybe Suzanne, you might know the answer here. I think this is happening at the federal level, but Alton is asking, is there loan forgiveness being looked at for veterans? And I know California with 376, we have some special protections there.
Yeah, well, I mean, for folks who are connected to the military, your time served counts as public service. So just make sure that you're getting credit for that, certifying your employment and having worked in the military. There are, as part of the changes to PSLF, we are pushing for the department to recognize, we want them to recognize the type of employment and not get so caught up on the tax status of the employer. That is being debated right now. As you may know, if you work for a government agency or for a 501c3 tax exempt nonprofit, you should be good to go. There are debates about whether other types of nonprofits and or whether you may be getting paid, this is an issue for people who are contractors, maybe getting through a contracting agency, maybe getting your paycheck from a for-profit corporation, but you're being placed in a public school. Shouldn't you be getting credit for that as well? So just know that there are, that is being debated at the Department of Education. And so, don't know necessarily based on the question, where that person may have worked or may be working, but it is worth it to try to push for and document the kind of work that you do and make the case to the Department of Education that it is public service. But you should know that your time spent serving in the military, I believe serving in the Peace Corps as well, should be counting toward PSLF, if that's the question. And also if you have a disability and that you may also have some other rights there as well. And it's important to talk to your servicer about that.
Thank you all of our panelists for taking the time to be here and sharing your expertise.